Part 19. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 181. After the tide leaves, the sun gradually rises from the sea level. After sleeping until noon, Gao Qiang yawned, sat up from the bed and stretched, rubbing his groggy eyes. Well, I slept well. Another uneventful night. This age of navigation was really calm. The early morning sunlight shone in through the cabin window, and there was a loud noise outside the cabin door. Putting his hand down, Gao Qiang suddenly touched something soft. Looking down, Haituanzi was lying on the bed, holding a small dried fish in his mouth and looking at him. Seeing Gao Qiang looking over, Haituanzi tilted his head. Whoa! You woke up quite early. Gao Qiang smiled and patted Haituanzi on the head, then picked up Haituanzi and put it on his shoulders. As soon as she walked onto the deck, she saw Sasha being pulled by the ears by Juluo to teach her a lesson. Okay, you've learned how to waste food, right? It hurts, Sasha begged for mercy with tears in her eyes. I really didn't spill the ketchup. Seeing Gao Qiang walking out of the cabin door, Sasha looked over for help. Lord. Listen to Sasha say this. Juluo then put down the hand holding Sasha's ear, turned his head and smiled at Gao Qiang. Good morning, Lord. Breakfast has been prepared and placed on the upper deck. Taking advantage of this time, Sasha naturally fled towards the upper deck. When Gao Qiang walked to the upper deck, everyone except him has basically started their day's work. The sailors and fishermen carefully wiped the stains on the turret with cloths, looking at the cruiser as if they were their own thorns. On the other side, Yena and others were sitting together, holding a navigation chart and seemed to be thinking about something. Seeing Gao Qiang just walking out of the lower deck, Long Xianyeo rolled her eyes. Hey, you finally woke up. Gao Qiang was in a good sleep state and could have lunch as breakfast. But Gao Qiang didn't care about this. Taking the food from Juluo's hand, Gao Qiang held up the plate and moved between them. What are you looking at? Well, I have to mention our dear Sasha. Juluo glanced at Sasha fiercely. Sasha ate some secretly last night and spilled some spices in the kitchen, so we had to make some supplies before crossing the whirlpool area. On the other side, Sasha was happily eating the food prepared by Juluo, as if her scar had healed and she had forgotten the pain. Seeing this, Juluo spread his hands and sighed helplessly. Then he walked behind Gao Qiang and pointed at an area on the navigation chart. This is Yushan Island, a large island in the 9th channel, and it is also a place we will pass by next. As for why you chose this place, Juluo looked at the old fisherman who was following behind Yena. The old fisherman Chiaoda did not follow Wang Chuan to help make a nest today just to discuss this matter. Seeing Juluo looking over, Chiaoda quickly explained to everyone. Today's Yushan Island is home to one of the most prosperous trading ports in the 9th channel. On our way forward, only Yushan Island has a large enough dock to accommodate our ironclads. Gao Qiang nodded and continued to look at other parts of the navigation chart. This nautical chart actually came with the scrapped cruiser, and the version is slightly older. It has the coordinates of all the islands, but it is not clear which force is currently in control of each island and what buildings have been built. In Juluo's words, no matter who the owner of these islands is, it makes no difference to him. However, as a recruited territory citizen, Chiaoda actually knew the distribution of forces on some islands. Gao Qiang glanced at Long Xianyeo. The sailors recruited by Long Xianyeo did not have this kind of intelligence, which was enough to prove the special nature of the fishermen. It seems that before Yena was cleared by intervention, the type of territory he randomly arrived at should have something to do with intelligence, so the initial sailor unit was replaced by fishermen. But Yushan Island? Gao Qiang put down the navigation chart and said, you just have to figure it out. Did you predict their course? Deep under the sea, Chao Chi asked a sea lord in front of him. Since the failure of the night raid plan, Chao Chi has temporarily given up on this plan and turned to other Sea Lords who were developing well to seek cooperation. And the person in front of him was Chuanming, a Sea Lord whose level was no less than his own. He holds a rare object barracks in his hand, which can train elite hunters of the Sea tribe. This is a big killer in the deep sea. Elite hunter of the Sea tribe. Introduction: Hunters of the deep sea, real warriors born specifically for hunting. They are no longer fearless of death, but they are smarter, more elite, and more powerful. Characteristics: Hunter perception, advanced trident mastery, advanced underwater combat mastery. What Chao Chi is interested in is naturally the hunter perception characteristics of elite hunters. This feature allows elite hunters to observe the movements of their prey from a safe position. Only by grasping the course of action of Gao Qiang and his party can he make a better plan for the next step. Facing Chao Chi's question, Chuanming nodded. I sent some elite hunters to observe the 2 ships you mentioned. According to the current route, they will pass dozens of islands along the way. But after eliminating most of the impossible coordinates, I came to a conclusion. Yushan Island, Anjin Trade Port. If they want to dock, only this giant trade port along the way can dock their ships. Yushan Island. Hearing this name, Chao Chi's eyes narrowed. Yushan Island is not special. Although Anjin Trade Port is huge, it is not the only one in the 9th channel. What is really special is the people on Yushan Island. I'm going to Yushan Island. Why are you going to the human island? Chuanming seemed a little puzzled. Yushan Island is under the control of indigenous humans. Although these humans are not on the same path as the Lord, they are not much better than the sea people. But seeing that Chao Chi's tone did not seem to be joking, he did not mean to stop it. After all, the relationship between the two is just a cooperative relationship. What Chao Chi wants to do, he has no control over. But I must emphasize again that I will not participate in the battle against the ironclad ship, Chuanming emphasized. This is also a major premise for his cooperation with Chao Chi. He would not directly participate in battles involving ships above the level of ironclad ships. A smart hunter can recognize his own strength, only in this way can his identity not change from hunter to prey. After emphasizing, Chuanming turned around and led his men away. His point of view was different from Chao Chi's. In Chuanming's opinion, instead of attacking the opponent, it is better to find a way to make himself stronger. Next, he had to continue hunting marine creatures and use blood food to develop his own power. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 182. Without stopping Chuanming from leaving, the water in front of Chao Chi quickly fell into calm. He knew that the cooperation with Chuanming had been completed, and the other party had helped him find the navigation target of the ironclad ship. As for what to plan next, it depends on you. Compared to Chuanming, he has more inside information. For example, the governor of Yushan Island is completely a target that can be fought for. At the bottom of the Yushan Island official residence, it was especially quiet tonight. A man with a big belly but luxurious clothes is already waiting here, holding a token in his hand with obsession. Conch from the deep sea. When she wants to see herself, she will use this conch to transmit her voice. At this time, he would dismiss most of the servants and stay alone on the ground floor of the mansion at night, just to meet her. He knew this was not what a governor should do. But he was addicted to it and couldn't extricate himself. Plop. Suddenly, a column of water rose from the puddle in front of him. A terrifying-looking fishman emerged from the puddle. "Ah!" Screams echoed throughout the mansion. The governor sat down on the ground with his plump butt and kept retreating. He gradually relaxed until he touched a musket hanging on the wall. And in front of him, after emerging from the puddle, Chao Chi stared at the governor who was aiming his musket at him, and dropped the trident in his hand to show that he had no ill intentions. Hurrying slowly, he finally arrived at Yushin Island before the human lords. Speaking of which, this passage leading directly to the bottom of the official residence was built by Zaka, the governor of Yushin Island, personally for the High Clan. Of course, the Sea Clan here does not refer to him. At this time, after Zaka calmed down, he gradually put down the musket in his hand. He recognized Chao Chi's identity. Although most of the fishmen were ugly in his eyes, there were inevitably a few that were more impressive. "Why is it you who came here today?" Zaka asked angrily. It seems that if Chao Chi doesn't give himself an explanation today, he won't get any good results. Chao Chi looked at Zaka's eyes that didn't want to see him, and naturally knew what the other person was thinking. What he wanted to see was not himself, but Karma. Karma killed many lords on the human side with his song. But during this period, her singing also won the favor of an indigenous governor. This governor is none other than Zaka, the governor of Yushin Island. "Karma is dead," Chao Chi said suddenly. Listening to Chao Chi's words, Zaka didn't show much surprise and seemed to be used to it. But after quickly realizing what Chao Chi said, Zaka frowned and twisted his whole fat face together. The joke is not funny. Chao Chi lowered his head and was not in a hurry to defend himself. Speaking of which, the relationship between Haka and Kama is a bit unique. As the governor, Zaka regards the fish-tailed Kama as a special plaything and his forbidden pet. For this reason, a passage connecting to the sea was specially built under the official residence, just to provide Kama with the opportunity to go to his official residence. On the other hand, Kama regarded Zaka as a tool to be conquered by his singing. As long as she hooks her fingers, Zaka will be at her mercy like a doll on a string. Of course, all this assumes that Kama is still alive. No matter how bad Zaka is, he is still the governor of a large island, not to mention that this island also controls an extremely prosperous trading port. Now that Kama is dead, Chao Chi coming to see Zaka alone is tantamount to entering the tiger's den alone. If Haka doesn't believe him, then he may have a hard time leaving alive. But after a moment, Chao Chi knew that he had made the right bet when he saw that Zaka made no move to leave the basement. Sometimes silence is the best explanation. As a follower of Kama, there was no need for me to lie to him about this kind of thing. As long as Kama is still alive, this lie is really easy to expose. "Who did it?" Zaka said solemnly. Chao Chi took out a wet navigation chart from the water and pointed to one of the areas. "Fog City." Zaka frowned. Everyone knows that fog is a dangerous area where the direction cannot be observed. "Where have you been?" "No, actually, I have not seen fog in the sea area." Chao Chi shook his head. "There is only one island in the sea that is not marked on nautical charts." Haka waved his hand to interrupt Chao Chi. "The fact that you came to me to report her death is actually related to Fog City, right?" "That's right." Chao Chi nodded. "The Fog City ship that killed Kama is heading towards Yushin Island." "I see." Zaka has been the governor for so many years that he cannot understand the meaning of Chao Chi's words. Squinting his eyes, Zaka looked at Chao Chi with a dangerous look. "You think of me as a knife in your hand." Chao Chi continued to remain silent. He had expected the current situation. Without Kama, Zaka, the governor of Yushin Island, is no fool. But he still has a bargaining chip. The ship that killed Kama was an ironclad ship. After saying this, Chao Chi clearly saw a greedy look flashing in Zaka's eyes. After noticing this, Chao Chi couldn't help but feel a little sarcastic. If it was just hatred or greed, Zaka might not have attacked the human lord. But what if the two were combined? Whether it was revenge for Kama for the ironclad ship or coveting the ironclad ship for revenge for Kama. In short, Zaka found enough reasons to convince himself. After 2 light coughs, Zaka looked at Kaokai with one eye closed. "Anyway, this is just your one-sided statement. This governor will go to meet those guys in person, and the right and wrong will naturally be known after a debate." Seeing Zaka turning around and leaving, Kaokai couldn't help asking, "What are you going to do?" Hearing Kaokai's question, Zaka couldn't help but pause. Then he sneered. "Of course, I will praise them to the sky first and let them relax their vigilance. But if the result that this governor finally gets is different from what you said, you know the end." After that, Zaka completely left the basement of the official residence, leaving Kaokai alone here. At this moment, Chao Chi was still thinking about what Zaka said. Praise to death? Lord, the waters of Yushan Island are ahead. Juluo's report came to his ears, and Gao Qiang kept looking at the surrounding seas. After approaching Yushan Island, the originally empty sea suddenly became a lot more lively. There were fishing boats everywhere, and from time to time, huge merchant ships loaded with cargo could be seen coming or leaving. Gao Qiang even saw ironclad ships from other forces. However, this so-called ironclad ship seemed to be very different from his own cruiser. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 183. Under Gao Qiang's gaze. The ironclad ship in the distance seemed to be just wrapped in a heavy iron sheet with a wooden hull. At the same time, the design of the sailing mast was completely abandoned, and it was driven by a human-powered water wheel instead. But the ramming part was not made of wood, but made of pure iron. It seemed that it should be easy to tear up ordinary wooden ships. Huh! Juluo suddenly made a surprised sound. That ironclad ship seems to be approaching us. At this moment, the ironclad ship turned all its guns to the opposite direction and released a friendly signal. Interesting. Gao Qiang looked at the actions of the ironclad ship opposite and touched his chin thoughtfully. When he was waiting for Long Xianyao before, he took Yana to the channel to play a wave of autumn wind. In Gao Qiang's opinion, this ironclad ship might be coming for him. I haven't robbed many ships, so has my bad reputation spread here? That's right, your bad reputation is known to everyone from the plankton on the bottom of the sea to the other side of the ocean. Satan's flattering voice came from behind Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang rolled his eyes. Don't praise me with the words you use to praise yourself, as if I am so evil. However, if it is really related to the merchant ships he robbed, could the other party come to make him pay taxes? Thinking about the word tax, Gao Qiang narrowed his eyes dangerously. When he was hesitating whether to directly call for someone to sink the other party, the ironclad ship had approached the distance where the sound could be transmitted. On the opposite ironclad ship, a sailor was heard shouting with all his strength. Dear guests from the Fog City, our governor invites you to come over for a chat. Fog City? Are they talking about us? Gao Qiang looked at Juluo in confusion. Since entering the age of discovery, he seemed to have not seen any fog. Juluo nodded, took out the nautical chart, and pointed to the area marked with the burial ground. Our sea area seems to be called the Fog City Sea Area by outsiders. It's just a different name, you don't have to care. After understanding the situation, Gao Qiang nodded. Then he called Long Xianyao and the others together. Anyway, they all had to go to the island for supplies. Since the governor of Yushan Island was so thoughtful, it saved a lot of trouble. Following the ironclad ship all the way, Gao Qiang finally saw the huge trade port that Jiaoda mentioned. Looking around, several huge four-mast sailing ships were docked there, and the rest of the large and small sailing ships were countless. There were also countless sailors in rough work clothes, sweating profusely loading and unloading cargo, just like hard-working ants. This was the largest port dock that Gao Qiang had seen except for the burial dock. But the ironclad ship did not stop here. Instead, it led Gao Qiang to another direction of the port. This time, Gao Qiang saw a decreasing number of merchant ships along the way, while warships increased. These warships were floating on the ocean on alert, blocking the merchant ships from approaching. During this period, Gao Qiang also saw the trace of another ironclad ship. To have two ironclad ships, Yushan Island was quite capable. Until the moment when the ironclad ship stopped, there was no trace of merchant ships around. This port area seemed to be completely cleared. There was a group of honor guards waiting on the shore, the ground was cleaned spotlessly, and there was even a clean and tidy red carpet on it. It was in sharp contrast to the scene of the sailors working hard just now that Gao Qiang saw. He couldn't help but sigh at the luxury of the ruling class. The cruiser was docked at the port, leaving the sailors and fishermen to guard the ship, and Gao Qiang and his party went down. Zaka squinted and stared at Gao Qiang and others who came down from the ironclad ship. He was not a fool, and naturally saw the difference between the other party's ironclad ship and his own. Although the tonnage seems to be not much different, the opponent's ironclad ship does not seem to use human power at all. The company's ship. Such a thought suddenly popped up in Zaka's mind. Only the Pan-Ocean Free Trade Company, under the premise of monopolizing technology, can manufacture such a ship that is far superior to their governors in various places. A trace of fear rose in his heart. But Zaka did not change his original plan. With a wave of his hand, the surrounding guard of honor played exciting music. And Zaka put on a kind smile on his face, with a big belly, and walked past the bureaucrats to meet Gao Qiang. "I guess you are the fleet from the Fog City. I am Zaka, the governor of Yushan Island. I didn't expect your grand prize in advance, so I can only come to welcome you in a hurry. If I am negligent, I hope you will forgive me." Listening to Zaka's honorific words, anyone would have a little good impression of him at first impression. But at this moment, Sasha glanced around and saw that there was no food at all. She couldn't help but muttered quietly, "Really quite neglectful." The air froze for a few seconds. Long Xianyao looked at Sasha in astonishment. So facing the other party's politeness, should you respond to such words? It was visible to the naked eye that Zaka's smile almost didn't hold. Facing the unknown person from the Fog City. When it was possible that it was his enemy, his first reaction was to praise him first. The higher he praised him, the more miserable the other party would fall. The guard of honor at the moment is the highest standard of hospitality on Yushan Island. He thought about what the other party would say to his grand welcome. For example, he was flattered or something. But he never expected that the other party would actually say something quite rude. Ahem. Reluctantly maintaining a smile, Zaka whispered to Gao Qiang, "You see the sea breeze on the shore is humid, why don't you go to my official residence to have a chat? Is he a tortoise? How can he be so patient?" Sasha subconsciously said what she was thinking. Listening to Sasha's outspoken words, the atmosphere on the field was obviously a little awkward. Gao Qiang gave Zaka an apologetic look. Sasha is a perfect diplomat, but unfortunately she is only good at insulting diplomacy. Judging from the clenched fist in Zaka's hand, he should not be calm at the moment. The fat on his face is already prominent, but he still has to maintain a kind smile. Gao Qiang can hardly imagine how the other party can keep his composure. Ahem, sorry. Just when the atmosphere was getting tense, Long Xianyao suddenly stood up and laughed. Pushing Sasha to hide behind Dakai, Long Xianyao walked to Zaka openly. "You must be the governor Zaka of Yushan Island. I have heard of you for a long time." Although she just knew the other party's name a few minutes ago, it did not affect Long Xianyao's politeness. Finally, there was a normal person. Zaka was also relieved. If Sasha said a few more words, the conversation would definitely not continue. "Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 184. By the way, the distinguished guests from Fog City have come all the way, so they must be hungry too. I have prepared a banquet in the mansion, and I am thinking of entertaining you all. Why don't you all go down to the mansion and rest for a while? When she heard the word feast, Shasha's eyes brightened obviously. I didn't expect that although he looks fat on the outside, he is actually quite nice. Look fat on the outside. Listening to what Shasha said, the fat on Zaka's body shook unconsciously. But by this time Zaka had learned to ignore Shasha's words. As long as you ignore all of Shasha's words, you won't show a gaffe. Otherwise, even a few hearts will not be able to stand their anger. Facing Zaka's invitation, Long Xianyeo first glanced behind her with her peripheral vision. Seeing everyone's indifferent look, I knew what everyone was thinking. It's okay to go or not, but obviously Sasha really wants to go. After understanding this, Long Xianyeo showed a formal and decent smile to Zaka. Since it is Governor Zaka's good intention, then we should be respectful rather than obey. Zaka's eyes narrowed. The temperament displayed by Long Xianyeo at this moment, although still a little immature, is very company-like. When he was discussing cooperation with the company's tax officer, the other party gave him a similar feeling. This made him feel that Gao Qiang and his team had something to do with the company. Suddenly, Zaka let out several heroic laughs. Ha ha ha, what are you waiting for? He patted his big belly and stretched out his hand to look outside the port. Please. At this time, the honor guard spread out to both sides, leaving a passable path for everyone. Escorting everyone to Zaka's official residence, the honor guard bowed to Zaka and many officials and nobles of Yushan Island before turning around and retreating. At this moment, two maids walked out and bowed to open the door of the mansion. A magnificent scene came into view. In Zaka's official residence, crystal pendants hang from the ceiling, and the table is filled with gold and silver tableware. Even the pool for everyone's use is full of rich-smelling wine. One after another delicacies were placed on the table, which showed the high standard of this reception. Everyone, please. Glancing at the actions of everyone, Zaka couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth, showing a confident smile. What he, Governor Yushin, can produce is something that a few country bumpkins have never seen before. So what if it's the legendary Foggy Sea area? He had never heard of any huge trading port in the waters of Wudu. After throwing away the veil of mystery, it is nothing. Thinking of this, Zaka couldn't help but start to act. Facing Gao Qiang and his group, he said with a smile, "Don't be polite to me, just eat and drink as you please, just treat it as your own home." Real. Upon hearing this, Shasha's eyes lit up and she ran out. Since Zaka said you're welcome, she naturally wasn't polite either. When she came to a plate of roasted suckling pig, Shasha grabbed it without any reservation. Tear off the fragrant and crispy roasted pork skin and eat it with the dipping sauce on the side. Well, although it's a little worse than the chef sisters, it's still qualified. Zaka's eyelids twitched. This is really rude to him. Juluo on the side smiled and shook his head after hearing what Shasha said. This girl Shasha, after all, is the food invited by others, so she can save some face for others. With that said, he walked over to Zaka, picked up the tableware, gently picked up a piece of roast chicken and put it into his mouth. Suddenly, the corners of Juluo's mouth curved in a strange way. Oh! Interesting. The juices of the roasted chicken are well preserved, but unfortunately the seasoning is too heavy, which actually masks the taste of the chicken itself. Can you choose these? Zaka's brow darkened. He originally wanted to shock the country bumpkins, but he didn't expect these country bumpkins to cause trouble for him. If you didn't know this, you would have thought that his official residence was holding some kind of food competition, and Juluo was the judge of this competition. I want to choke back a few words. But considering his own purpose, Haka endured it for the time being. Sorry. Long Xianyeo hurriedly stepped forward to try to block Zaka's sight and at the same time smooth things over. Your Majesty the Governor, you see it's quite chaotic outside. How about the two of us go to the back room to have a chat? Zaka took a deep breath, suppressed all the emotions in his body, and then nodded. After gradually calming down, he discovered that the people present were actually all beauties, and even their appearance was much better than that of his maid. It's a pity that except for Long Xianyeo, who knows the general situation, everyone else has an extra mouth. Giving the servant a look, he opened a side door of the mansion with understanding. Zaka looked at Long Xianyeo with a cheerful look. But then I realized that I didn't even ask the other person's name. This, distinguished guest from the Fog City, you can tell from a glance that he has a general understanding of the situation. Since you have asked so, let's go to the reception room to chat. After saying that, he wanted to step forward and pull Long Xianyeo's arm. Are you okay? Gao Qiang, who was watching Zaka's sudden overstepping action, frowned and sent a private message to Long Xianyeo. After all, he is his student and accomplice. What Haka did was a bit disrespectful. It's okay, just eat well outside. I'm good at dealing with this kind of situation. He can't touch me. After Long Xianyeo replied to Gao Qiang's private chat, she looked at Zaka's outstretched arm and didn't avoid it at all. This was actually her first time dealing with such an action. But as the daughter of Teng Long Group, she had seen pigs run even if she hadn't eaten pork. The filth between the major groups is no less than that of Governor Zaka. Walking towards Zaka head-on, Long Xianyeo naturally avoided the other party's pulling action and simply shook hands with the other party. Then smiled slightly and said, "Please." Zaka was stunned by Long Xianyeo's action, but it was not easy to do anything in public. So he could only withdraw his hand and walk towards the reception room. The two gradually disappeared from the sight of the group. After Zaka left, the banquet hall soon fell into a lively scene. The leaders of various Yushan islands complimented each other and tried to build relationships. It was Gao Qiang and other protagonists of the banquet who were thrown aside by the dignitaries of Yushan Island because of Zaka's departure. The gesture was so obvious, how could Gao Qiang not know what was going on? It seems that their so-called welcome to us is entirely for Zaka's sake. Now that Zaka has left, the dignitaries have all revealed their true colors. At this moment, Gao Qiang felt his sleeve being gently pulled by Juluo. Turning around, Juluo was squinting and smiling at him. "Can I talk to you privately? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 185. Because the nobles didn't care about Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang easily followed Juluo to a corner where no one was. Juluo held a tray in his hand, on which were placed several different dishes, both meat and vegetables. Gao Qiang frowned. It had reached the point where Juluo needed to remind himself directly, could there be something wrong with the dish? Is there poison in this dish? Gao Qiang asked subconsciously, is Zaka going to poison us? If there was anything wrong with the dish, Gao Qiang's first thought was the most serious thing. Juluo chuckled. You think too seriously, this is not the case. But the first half of your sentence is not completely wrong. The first half of the sentence. Gao Qiang recalled for a few seconds, suddenly widened his eyes, lowered his voice and asked, is there poison in the dish? Juluo nodded. In fact, I don't know whether I should say that the chef who made these dishes is too smart or simply stupid. Picking up a piece of meat, Juluo put it in his mouth to feel it. The sauce of the dish contains a numb element, but it is very mild, so mild that it is difficult to affect the body. Because these elements are too mild, many professional chefs may not be able to taste them. So I had doubts before, maybe the chefs in the governor's mansion are too poor and failed to handle the ingredients well. But Juluo picked up another piece of pumpkin and ate it. When I tried different dishes, I found that each dish contained this mild numb element. After listening to Juluo's words, Gao Qiang looked at the noisy banquet hall next to him with strange eyes. If it is true as Juluo said, the other party poisoned the dishes, it would not make sense. So many nobles ate the dishes at the banquet, did Zaka want to poison all of them? You don't have to think too seriously. Through Gao Qiang's eyes, Zhuluo realized that Gao Qiang had made the situation serious, and then hurriedly explained. There is an old saying in the chef world that talking about toxicity without considering the dosage is just a hooligan. In fact, with the content of this numbing element, as long as you don't eat like Sasha, even if you eat too much, you won't have much reaction. In most cases, nothing abnormal will happen. The worst case is that you will get cramps when you do strenuous exercise. Listening to Zhuluo's words, Gao Qiang's expression also looked a little weird. If the worst case is this, Zaka seems to have no reason to poison himself. Because the dosage of the toxin is too small, the effect is only slightly numb. Even Zhuluo is not sure whether the chef who prepared the banquet did it intentionally or unintentionally. So this dish. Gao Qiang hesitated and looked at Zhuluo. You can eat the dishes here without worry. Zhuluo immediately responded, my main purpose is actually just to remind you that it is best not to believe the attitudes shown by some scoundrels. After getting Zhuluo's guarantee on the safety of the dishes, Gao Qiang quickly returned to the dining table. There were already a pile of bones in front of Sasha and Dakai, and they seemed to be competing to see who could eat more, without any manners. Among the few people who came with Gao Qiang. At this moment, only Yana was sitting at the table, picking seafood elegantly. While slurping the meat and juice of the lobster, Yana muttered his sins and confessed himself. Woo, the breath of life, damn, why is it so fragrant? As an elf who advocates life and nature, Yana once vowed not to eat them before they die naturally. If it is a life that has been killed, he will never eat it. It was during this time on the ship that Yana slightly relaxed some of his harsh requirements for himself. For example, it is not too much to eat a killed creature a day. As a natural partner. If those fish, shrimps, and crabs knew that they had contributed to the continuation of the life of an elf, they would definitely smile in their graves. Thinking of this, Yana showed tears of emotion, and then took another plate of seafood and placed it in front of him. Actually, because Zhuluo's cooking skills were so good, Yana had already raised the target of eating dead creatures from 1 to 50 per day. But the feast held by Zaka today, although the quality was not good, the quantity was enough. Eating only 50 seafood a day, no matter how you think about it, it is too harsh on yourself. I'll raise it to 50 more. After breaking through his bottom line without any psychological pressure, Yana stuffed the crab roe in his hand into his mouth with a guilty look on his face. At this time, Gao Qiang, who had been paying attention to Yana's show for a long time, shook his head. Sure enough, he had too high expectations for these people. Except Zhuluo, no one is reliable. Sighing, Gao Qiang casually took a glass of fine wine on the table. You found a rare item, jadeite glass cup. What the hell? The hand holding the wine glass paused. Gao Qiang looked at the wine glass in front of him, and his eyes narrowed into a slit. Any wine glass can be labeled as a rare item. Is it that Governor Zaka is too rich, or? Gao Qiang thought of another possibility. War games, although there will be real death, are still a game after all. An NPC like Zaka might be equivalent to a faction leader who issues tasks. He would place some bounties from time to time, and then take some of his own scraps as rewards. Just as Gao Qiang was thinking this. In the reception room, Zaka was laughing with Long Xianyeo. What Long Xianyeo didn't expect was that although Zaka's previous actions were a bit indecent, he didn't do anything beyond the limit when they were alone in the same room. On the contrary, Zaka seemed to be more concerned about some situations at sea. I heard that there is unrest at sea recently, Zaka sighed. Merchant ships traveling to and from Yushin Island often mention that they heard the singing of sirens while sailing. Every time the singing ends, some sailors will disappear. I wanted to issue a bounty order and use the assets in the palace to deal with the monster that caused panic, but I never had time to do it. The distinguished guest from the Fog City happened to come from that sea area. He should not have encountered any danger, right? After hearing what Zaka said, Long Xianyeo vaguely remembered it. Previously, when she was on Baexiang Island, this strange singing seemed to have appeared among the sea tribes that besieged her and the military lord. But the owner of that singing was dead. The abrupt end of the singing was also a major reason for the retreat of the sea tribe. If this is what Governor Zaka is worried about, I think it is actually unnecessary, Long Xianyeo said softly. I believe that there will be no such singing to disturb your territorial waters in the future. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 186. Zaka paused for a few seconds. Then he laughed. Okay. How could he not understand the meaning of Long Xianyeo's words? Where Long Xianyeo couldn't see him, Zaka's fat hands clenched tightly. But on the bright side, Haka still maintains a kind face. You guys in Fog City have done your best to eliminate harm to the people. I will definitely send a banner to Pan Ocean Free Trade Company in person to praise you for your achievements. Long Xianyeo took a sip of tea, smiled and nodded. From his expression, Zaka couldn't see anything useful. It's too formulaic, just like those damn corporate dogs. Without showing anything unusual, Zaka quickly changed the topic to another direction. When the two started chatting, Gao Qiang gradually began to check the properties of the strange objects in his hands. Jade glazed lamp, rare object. Effect 1, the alcoholic liquid contained in the glass cup will be kept chilled, sobered up, and the aging effect will gradually be added. Effect 2, when you collect the emerald glazed lamp, glazed luminous pearl, and amber gold wire cup at the same time, the clue conditions for the miracle ship Dark Deep Sea will be unlocked. This is already the fourth clue Gao Qiang has learned about the miracle ship so far. The first three clues are the company's meteor, the legendary explorer's treasure map, and an unknown miracle ship belonging to the Blood tribe. But it seems that this new clue is the most demanding at the moment. You need to collect 3 rare objects first to obtain a clue condition. Not at all as good as the legendary explorer's treasure map. At least the treasure map can be directly compared with your own complete navigation chart, which can save the time needed to find the fragments. But now that it's in his hands, even if it's a piece of junk, he won't put it back. Gao Qiang dug into his trouser pocket and found the privateering certificate lying there quietly. He is a man with legal rights to plunder. I just don't know if this privateering warrant is suitable for a governor. Think about it from another perspective. Gao Qiang looked towards the banquet hall with his eyes. What if the remaining 2 strange objects are also here? Hiss. It's not impossible to think so. After rolling his eyes, Gao Qiang suddenly walked up to Shasha and pulled her into the corner. At this moment, Shasha's mouth was still full of food, and her speech was a little slurred. Dragon Ball, you are a magic horse. After waiting for Shasha to swallow everything in her mouth, Gao Qiang took out the jade glass cup and put it towards Shasha's face. Sasha didn't dodge, but just watched Gao Qiang's movements curiously. Until the emerald glass lamp exudes bursts of coolness. Wow, where did you get this kind of baby lord? SHH. Gao Qiang made a booing gesture. Then he pointed to the banquet hall. I found it in this banquet hall. I will tell you one person, but you must not spread it everywhere. Hey, Lord, do you think I am that kind of person? Sasha assured, slapping her breasts with greasy hands. Even if I eat all the food here today, I won't let the second person know about it. But, Lord, you said this was picked up from the banquet hall. Sasha rolled her eyes and showed a wicked smile. I always feel like Governor Zaka doesn't need anything like this. Otherwise we can kindly help him deal with them all. Gao Qiang looked at Shasha with a clear expression. Only when she starts to think of bad ideas does Shasha become so wise. I don't know which bad guy encouraged me to demolish Stonehenge in the first place. However, Gao Qiang still made a hesitant gesture. They entertain us with good wine and meat. If we are not polite, won't we be in the wrong eyes of outsiders? Isn't it just a mouthful? Shasha stared at Gao Qiang's eyes and expressed her confidence. Don't worry, just leave it to me. We can't be the first to do it. Hey, Gao Qiang sighed and patted Shasha heavily on the shoulder. I recognize your righteous heart. Has the Lord finished speaking? Shasha suddenly blinked. After that, I'll go back and continue eating. After that, without waiting for Gao Qiang's consent, Shasha had already disappeared without a trace. Looking at the jade glass cup that Shasha was holding tightly in her hands, Gao Qiang subconsciously squeezed his palms. Well, I have nothing in my hand. If you want to pick it up, you have to have Shasha know how to pick it up. I just managed some food. Because Juluo had said that food contained trace amounts of toxins, Gao Qiang did not eat more, but only managed to be about 80% full. Looking around again at this time, Gao Qiang found that the banquet had no intention of ending. The nobles didn't eat much at all. They always seemed to have endless topics to talk about, so much so that even a simple piece of pastry can last a long time. However, Yenna had already finished eating. After placing 2 large plates with the remnants of various types of seafood in front of me, Yenna burped with satisfaction. However, when he turned around, he saw Gao Qiang's face that was very close to him. What are you doing? Yenna jumped up in fright and took several steps back. How was the food? Gao Qiang asked. All right, it's okay. It's not as delicious as your cook's cooking. In that case, come with me to eat. Why should I follow you? Yenna's whole body stopped moving before she finished speaking. Then her eyes turned red and she showed a strange smile. Okay. Gao Qiang knew that this was Satan taking over Yenna's body again. In fact, in order not to scare the people on Yushan Island, Satan had already cooperated and returned to Yenna's body. Otherwise, seeing such a big demon flying in the sky, it is unknown how Zaka would react. If the Lord wants to go out to digest, I will accompany you. At this time, Juluo also came over. Gao Qiang saw a small cloth bag on her waist. What is this? Oh, this. Juluo picked up the small cloth bag and tossed it. Just now I asked the steward of the governor's mansion to borrow the universal currency for the route. It just so happens that I am going to buy some seasonings next. If the Lord wants to buy anything, just buy it. The departure of the 3 people was not noticeable. Although several maids found the traces of the 3 people. But because Gao Qiang was heading to the most prosperous central area of Yushan Island, it was completely opposite to the port. They simply pretended not to see it and didn't bother to do anything. Outside Zaka's official residence was a dense forest. As a governor, Zaka obviously had no intention of living with his subjects. But in the seemingly porous forest, a dragnet was actually laid. In just a few hundred meters, Gao Qiang had already met several musketeers. Fortunately, they all knew Gao Qiang, the man brought back by Zaka. They just said hello and quickly let him go. Finally, after passing another patrol team, Yana sniffed fiercely. Then a chilling smile emerged. I smell tension. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 187. A tense breath. Gao Qiang looked along where Yenna, or Satan, was looking. There, a team of musketeers, although well disguised, had a more timid temperament. This temperament is completely different from the musketeers they just encountered. especially after noticing Gao Qiang and others. Not only was their first reaction not to step forward to check or say hello, they actually pretended not to see it and retreated directly towards the outskirts of the forest. They don't know themselves. Gao Qiang suddenly felt like this. What do you think? Will you follow me and take a look? Yana asked in a bewitching voice. Gao Qiang touched his chin. It wasn't until the other party almost disappeared from sight that he nodded slowly. Good. Just now when he was staring at each other. Because of the miraculous characteristics, he could see the gap between the two sides in the opponent's back. In terms of military strength, the other party is as humble as an ant compared to us. This is a special use of estimation ability discovered by Gao Qiang. Miracle, 1 estimation. Introduction, the 37th of the 36 strategies. When facing any enemy, you always estimate that you can win. Effect, when you are alive on the game field, all lords in this game can directly see the gap between any lord and their own military, economic, and technological levels. This ability is not available to native characters in war games. In the previous low-level battlefields, because the number of indigenous people was not large and the temperament gap between them and the lords was too large, they had little effect. But as the gap of the times was flattened and it became increasingly difficult to tell the difference between the lords and the natives, this ability finally came into use. The group must have suddenly become nervous just now because they saw the level gap panel given by the war game. In terms of, the other party is like a god compared to us. Gao Qiang wanted to know what the plans of this group of people led by human lords, disguised as musketeers, were wandering near Zaka's mansion. After receiving Gao Qiang's affirmative reply, Yana looked at the musketeers in the distance with his back to him with a cat-and-mouse look. It wasn't until the other party's group completely disappeared that they started to follow them. Don't worry, I can smell the nervous smell they exude even if they run away to the ends of the earth. After dealing with several more musketry teams, Gao Qiang finally walked out of the forest. The view in front of them suddenly opened up, and a dirt road in the mountains also appeared in everyone's field of vision. Zaka's official residence is located on a higher ground on the island, making it extremely difficult to be ambushed. Looking down, you can see the bustling town with no end in sight. Regarding the prosperity of Yushan Island, Qiaoda had chatted with Gao Qiang and others before going to the island. Because Yushan Island is a large island in itself, it also has one of the few giant trading ports in the 9th channel. The permanent population alone reaches tens of millions. This is also the largest number of indigenous forces that Gao Qiang has ever seen in the game so far. On the soft soil of the dirt track, Gao Qiang saw the wheel marks left by the musketeers who had just left. It was obvious that this was a premeditated action. It seemed that during the time when Gao Qiang and others came out, the other party had already left in a carriage. However, on an island as big as Yushan Island, I really don't know how long it will take to walk on just 2 legs. Just as Gao Qiang was thinking this, a carriage slowly came from the other side. Judging from the decoration on the carriage, it is similar to the emblem on the exterior wall of the previous official residence. This should be the carriage belonging to Governor Zaka, and it seems to be transporting something now. Gao Qiang poked Yana with his elbow. We're guests, right? Yana smiled knowingly. Certainly. The next moment, a demon emerged from Yana's body. Juluo sighed helplessly and turned away. In the engine trading port slum, several carriages quickly passed through the dirty and smelly roads and stopped outside a hidden tavern. Because it's a slum. The smell emanating from the tavern is naturally not very good. It smells like cheap alcohol. Only the poorest and most unpopular poor sailors, as well as pirate drunkards, would choose to come to such a place to spend money. But apparently the people on the carriage didn't care. A group of people dressed as sailors jumped out of the carriage, threw their muskets into the carriage, and then filed into the 2nd floor of the tavern. The carriage left quickly, and the area around the tavern became calm, as if nothing had happened. On the second floor, several people in military uniforms were playing sailor poker, which is popular on the sea. When he saw the sound of footsteps coming, he looked towards the stairs warily. Seeing the familiar face of the visitor, I was relieved but also a little confused. "Lishan, didn't you take people to observe Zaka's mansion?" "Stop talking." The man known as Li Shan shook his head, dismissed his sailors, and sat down at the table. He casually picked up a low-quality drink that someone had drunk and took a sip. "Cough cough cough. It's something we blended ourselves, so you can drink it with confidence." Listen to what Li Shan said. A woman sitting next to her with the rank of lieutenant frowned and threw the handful of poker cards left in her hand to the ground. "Okay, what's going on?" Hearing this, Li Shan could only sigh. The terrain survey plan failed. Zaka was very cautious. Too many musketeers were deployed near the official residence, and we were almost discovered. I knew it would be like this. At the table, another man with the rank of second lieutenant also threw away his cards and said, "Although Zaka looks fat, he is not stupid. With Haka's character, it is impossible to give outsiders a chance. Fortunately, Li Shan is smart enough, otherwise he might end up with the same fate as his other colleagues. I'm talking about you." At this time, another man with the rank of captain on his body and a full beard on his face slapped the two remaining cards on the table with a dark face. "Have you had enough trouble?" Listening to the other party's words, everyone except Li Shan was frightened. He quickly picked up the poker from the ground with a smile and threw it on the table to mess it up. "Captain Chang, don't be angry. Aren't we worried about Li Shan?" "Yes, brother Shenrong, this might be our last day anyway. Calm down and don't get so angry." Chang Shenrong snorted coldly. He looked at Li Shan and said, "When you came back, you didn't leave your tail, right?" Li Shan immediately stood up straight and saluted. "Captain, don't worry, no one will notice me." At this moment, a loud noise came from the soles of several people's feet. Boom! Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Me Shida Di. Chapter 188. On the first floor of the tavern, the originally noisy and chaotic sounds stopped. Hold head high. Is someone coming to cause trouble? A group of fierce-looking pirates with numerous scars on their faces stood up, holding wine bottles and heading out of the tavern. They wanted to see which blind guy came to cause trouble when they were having a good time drinking. But after a while, many drunken drunkards in the tavern wiped their eyes and looked at the position of the tavern door in disbelief. The pirate who had just walked out now walked back with a bottle of wine. Oh my God, are they still sober? Until the next moment, they saw a monster with red skin and two horns on its head walking in. This monster is even several heads taller than those ferocious pirates. Sure enough, he was drunk. The drunkard picked up the bottle at hand and hit his head. Instantly, his vision fell into darkness and he fell asleep on the table. It should be fine after you wake up. But not everyone is as stupid as an alcoholic. I saw Satan completely walk into the tavern. Most of the guests who were drinking stood up and stared at Satan in fear. Every time Satan takes a step forward, they take a step back. Oh, it seems I'm not welcome here. Satan clutched his chest and said heartbrokenly. That's such a shame. Because I won't leave. Ha 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 ha. While laughing wildly, Satan sat at the bar of the tavern and looked at the bartender who was sweating in front of him jokingly. 4 glasses of the best wine you have here, thank you. Well. It sounds like Satan actually used honorifics politely. The bartender trembled and lowered his body, groping for the collection of fine wines under the counter. All the while his eyes were fixed on Satan. I'm afraid that if my eyes leave for a while, my head and neck will be separated. Soon, the bartender took out 4 wooden cups. The bartender poured the wine with trembling hands, but he spilled the wine all over the table. I'll wipe it right now, I'll wipe it right now. No need, I don't drink. Gao Qiang's voice came from outside the door. He is not as heartless as Satan. After tying the carriage driver to the fence to ensure that the carriage would not drive away by itself, Gao Qiang walked in with Ye Na and Zhu Luo. At this moment, Ye Na was holding her lower back in pain and found a chair to sit down on. It seems that Satan got out too fast this time, and it was quite painful for him to be trimmed. Looking at Ye Na's pretty face, some pirates couldn't help but swallowed. After all, they are people who make a living at sea. Sometimes men and women don't need to be so clearly distinguished. But seeing Satan guarding Yena, the pirates still retreated. Upstairs, Satan said casually and motioned to Gao Qiang that the person he was looking for was upstairs. Gao Qiang nodded, stood up and walked towards the second floor. Zhu Luo came to the bar and showed a kind smile to the bartender. Do you have anything on this list here? The bartender hesitantly took the list from Zhu Luo, and then looked strange. In fact, if you can open a tavern in a place like a slum, who can do anything? He thought the other party was here for such a large formation. Maybe they wanted some contraband such as cannons from active warships. After seeing the list, that's it? Table salt, a little. Spices, lots of them. Oranges, lots of them. Is this a tavern, a fruit shop, or a grocery store? There is also a small amount of it, and those who don't know think it is used for cooking. If Satan hadn't been sitting next to him, he would have suspected that Zhu Luo was here to cause trouble. But the next moment, a small bag of money was smashed on the table, causing the already silent tavern to fall into complete silence. Is the style of this small cloth bag an item from the Zaka governor's mansion? The bartender swallowed. No matter whether the other party stole or robbed him, or he was one of Hakka's people, he couldn't afford to offend either. How long will it take? Zhu Luo asked. Right away, right away. The bartender nodded frantically and held out 3 fingers. 3 hours. If I don't buy all the fruit condiments you want within 3 hours, I'll give you a head start. Then 3 hours. Zhu Luo ignored the small cloth bag on the bar and turned around to chase Gao Qiang up to the second floor. Because Satan did not move. The first floor was still silent at the moment. Li Shan, are you really sure you didn't leave a tail? Chang Shengrong's face looked a little ugly. You know, if we are discovered by Zaka now, escaping Yushan Island will be a problem. SHH-. At this time, the female lieutenant raised her finger to signal silence. Her eyes were on the stairs. Someone else is coming up. The figures of Gao Qiang and Zhu Luo appeared in the sight of several people. Seeing that there were only 2 people coming, they were obviously stunned. But the next moment, a group of sailors rushed out from all directions on the second floor with scimitars and muskets, and surrounded Gao Qiang and Zhu Luo. Sorry, we don't mean any harm. Chang Shengrong was the first to speak. But we have to make sure you don't mean any harm to us either. When Chang Shengrong spoke, Gao Qiang also saw the clothes worn by several people on the second floor. Although it has some tatters and wrinkles, the original style can still be seen clearly. He's from the military. His eyes moved, and Gao Qiang opened his mouth and said, I am Bayanian, the commander of the 24th Special Operations Brigade. Bayanian. Several people saw the confusion in each other's eyes. A brigade commander is equivalent to the military rank of a senior colonel. Is there anyone on Yushan Island with such a high military rank? But it's not a system, and they don't know much about it. Chang Shengrong and his group did not move for a few minutes. They seemed to be checking through friend information to see if there was Bayanian. After a while, Chang Shengrong showed a strange expression and said slowly, everyone put down their weapons. Then he patted the table in front of him. Colonel Bai, we have confirmed your existence to the Military Intelligence Department of the 5-star General Mike. Come and sit down. You just confirm the existence and don't recognize whether it is me or not. Gao Qiang asked curiously as he sat down at the card table. He just said it casually, but he didn't expect that the other party actually believed it. If I had known better, I would have stopped saying that I was a brigade commander and just said that I was a 5-star general. Do you believe it or not? Chang Shenrong handed Gao Qiang a few cards, then took out the wine with an unpleasant smell and took a sip. Anyway, there are only a few people left in our military headquarters on Yushan Island. It's too late for us to be happy if there are more people. There will be no more of our people soon. Why? Gao Qiang did not refuse the card Chang Shenrong was dealt. Play cards naturally, and at the same time, you can better understand what is going on here from the other party's mouth. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 189. Why? It's because of the Governor Zaka here. Chang Shenrong glanced at Gao Qiang, as if Gao Qiang should not be unaware of the news. But he soon felt relieved. While playing cards, Chang Shenrong chatted with Gao Qiang about everything that had happened on Yushan Island. This war game has been going on for several years. Gao Qiang calculated the time in his mind. According to Chang Shenrong, this war game had already started before he came of age. Since the start of the war, the power of the military has been fluctuating up and down. At present, Yushan Island can almost be regarded as the sphere of influence of the military. The military lord here is commanded by Major General Eddie, a loyal supporter of General Mike. During Eddie's command, the relationship between the military and Governor Zaka was quite ambiguous. I dare not say that they are as close as brothers, but they are definitely more than nodding acquaintances. Many times, Zaka would issue some rewards to the lords of the military. The military helped him to eliminate the threats on the waterway, and he paid some rare items or weapons and ammunition as a price. This win-win cooperation should have lasted for a long time. Until one day, Zaka politely invited Eddie to his official residence for dinner. That was the most polite time he was to Eddie. According to Chang Shenrong's recollection, Zaka used to look at Major General Eddie with eyes that were not as if he was looking at an inferior, but also full of arrogance. Only on that day, Zaka's face was full of smiles, and his eyes became extremely gentle. Eddie, who was unprepared, was beheaded in Zaka's official residence, and the blood column sprayed 3 feet high. It was from that day that the relationship between the governor's office of Yushan Island and the military was completely broken. The death of a major general, General Mike, a 5-star general, would never swallow this breath. And Zaka obviously didn't care. He even issued an order to blockade Yushan Island and kill any sailor and civilian of the military lord. But the strange thing is that he asked to capture the military leader alive. It's really strange. Gao Qiang fired the bomb in his hand while listening. On the other side, Li Shan, who had been standing straight for a long time, suddenly raised his head and shouted in a full voice, "General Mike will never abandon us. General Mike said that he would let us go home before the end of this year. Come on." The female lieutenant looked at the cards in her hand and shouted, then rolled her eyes at Li Shan. "It's time to face the reality. We have been abandoned. If General Mike really still cared about us, there would be no last few of us left on Yushan Island. So you haven't said yet, what does it mean that today is the last day?" Gao Qiang asked curiously. Chang Shenrong sighed. "Because we have been lurking for a while, we have found some clues. All the captured military lords are locked up in the basement of Zaka's official residence. It is said that Zaka will kill all the lords in the basement every once in a while, and we don't know how many are still alive. Originally, we would be the same as them, because we have no way to escape. But today is a special day. According to our observation, Zaka has moved all the warships to a corner, and the port has become a safe place. This may be a trap, but we have no choice. This is our only chance. Throwing the remaining pile of poker cards on the ground, Chang Shenrong looked at Gao Qiang seriously. Today we are going to sneak into Zaka's official residence and try to rescue as many colleagues as possible. It is possible that we will not be able to return. But at the same time, we have also prepared evacuation ships at the port. You can follow the sailors to the ship and wait for us. If you still don't see us at 12 o'clock tonight, don't hesitate and leave Yushan Island directly. It's time to settle this cause and effect. Chang Shenrong stood up and walked past Gao Qiang on the poker. Lifting a piece of floor, it turned out to be a secret passage. It seems that part of the wall on the first floor should be hollow, so that the secret passage on the second floor can directly enter the underground. For this day, Chang Shenrong and others have been preparing for a long time. Are you just going to watch them leave? After everyone left, Zhu stood behind Gao Qiang and asked. No, I'm just curious about the basement they mentioned. Gao Qiang raised his head and looked at Zhu. As a distinguished guest, is it okay for us to go and see Zaka's basement? When we went down to the first floor, the bartender had already prepared everything Zhu needed. There were so many things that they filled up a carriage. As for the money Zhu paid, it was still lying quietly on the bar, and no one dared to move it. With the current momentum of Governor Zaka, these untouchables in the slums dared not to defile Zaka's fabrics. When they returned to the governor's mansion, it was almost dusk, and Satan re-entered Yana's body. As soon as Gao Qiang and the other two stepped into the banquet hall, they saw Zaka and Long Xianyeo walking out of the reception room side by side. It seemed that Zaka did not do anything to Long Xianyeo, and the two chatted quite happily. Glancing at Gao Qiang who walked in from the gate, Zaka said nothing. Instead, he turned to Long Xianyeo and suggested, "It's getting late today, why don't you stay at my governor's mansion tonight? Wait until tomorrow, I will take care of the supplies for the distinguished guests in Fog City, and buy some good sailors, so that the distinguished guests can set off." Long Xianyeo wanted to refuse with a smile. But she received a private message from Gao Qiang. Promise him. After a pause, Long Xianyeo agreed to Zaka's proposal. Seeing that Long Xianyeo agreed so quickly, Zaka ordered the servants to prepare rooms for Gao Qiang and others, and then found a reason to leave the banquet hall. Looking at Zaka's back as he left, Gao Qiang raised his mouth. According to Chang Shenrong's words, there will definitely be a good show tonight. Besides, he obviously doesn't know Zaka, why does Zaka treat them so politely? This scene is so similar to the death of Major General Eddie in Chang Shenrong's words. If I want to leave now, will Zaka really be willing to let me go? The servant led him to the rest house. Just like what Zaka had done before, he did not neglect Gao Qiang and others at all, and even used the highest standards for the guest rooms. Sasha was carried back by Dakai with her bloated stomach. Because she had eaten for most of the day, Sasha was so full that she almost had no strength to walk. At this point, except for Wang Chuan who was still fishing on the boat, everyone else on Gao Qiang's side had arrived. He looked at the soft big bed in front of him. Gao Qiang had no intention of waiting for time to pass. We have to find a way to go to the basement here, Gao Qiang whispered. He was really curious about what Zaka was doing. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 190. But the problem now is. Long Xianyeo pulled the doorframe, but it didn't move at all. Then he turned around, spread his hands and shrugged. The door seems to be locked from the outside. She actually wanted to leave first, because in the conversation with Zaka, she could feel Zaka's hesitation. Zaka is worried about something. This fear does not necessarily originate from them. But as long as he doesn't make up his mind to attack them, Zaka will always be kind, and they will have the opportunity to leave Yushan Island. But now, It seems that their move to stay has given Haka the opportunity to unleash his malice. Haka's inner balance has begun to waver. The act of locking the door was probably his last hesitation. Door, where is the door? Gao Qiang crossed his hands and pursed his lips in the direction of Dekai. Dekai, an entry-level shipwright, is here and wants to lock everyone in? There are no doors. Uncle, please, Gao Qiang shouted to Dekai. Dekai nodded and walked to the door. Boom. A strong wind blew past, and the door at Long Xianyeo's hand disappeared. Turning around, he saw that the door had hit the corridor wall, and there was a deep fist mark on the gold-wired surface. Dekai was standing in the aisle now, motionless. Uncle, are you okay? Long Xianyeo asked hesitantly. Like everyone else, during this period of sailing, she also got used to calling Dekai uncle. Dekai slowly moved his muscles. After the muscles twitched several times visible to the naked eye, they regained their composure. I'm having cramps, but I'm fine. Everyone came from the house to the corridor. At this moment, the sky has passed beyond dusk and has completely entered the night. But what is puzzling is that during the short time everyone was in the room, the entire mansion actually fell silent. It is understandable that the officials and nobles of all levels who were in the banquet hall in the morning have left. But among the maids and male servants who filled the official residence, there was not a single one to be seen at the moment. It seems I can come out and do some activities. Satan's incoherent voice came. When he said this, he had actually emerged from Yena's body. Floating in mid-air, Satan raised a ferocious smile on his lips. I smell fear. Deep underground in the official residence, the originally clean puddle was now stained red with blood. How are things going? Zaka asked coldly behind him. The old butler bowed slightly. The door has been locked and reinforced by us. Even if they want to break out, they will be unable to do so due to muscle cramps. It's just, do you really want to do something to them? The old housekeeper hesitated for a moment before continuing, you must have felt it. These people in Fog City may have something to do with the company. They are different from the people here. As he spoke, the old housekeeper glanced at the iron cage that had just been delivered from the basement. The cages are connected by chains. Inside each iron cage are one or more naked men and women. Some of them can see the shadow of the military, but some of them have greener faces, and they are just innocent lords who were involved. That's enough. Zaka's hoarse voice stopped the old housekeeper from continuing. I have made up my mind. The old housekeeper sighed and retreated. After the old housekeeper left, Zaka coldly grabbed the hair of the next female lord. Just now, where did we go? The female lord watched with horror as Zaka picked up a boning knife. She had just witnessed with her own eyes how many lords Zaka had killed with this knife. He would use this knife to cut off the lord's bones section by section from hands to toes, and then throw them into the puddle in front of him. He. It's obviously a gift for her. But why did she die in front of you? Zaka seemed to remember something sad, and he slashed one of the female lord's phalanges with the boning knife in his hand. Ah! The female lord wanted to scream, but she had been locked in the cage for so long that she almost didn't have the strength to scream. Zaka will naturally not feel any pity for her. One blow after another, each blow with all his strength. He hates. I hate that someone killed my forbidden wife, and I hate my hesitation even more. The enemy is right in front of him, but he is timid and even has the intention of not being at odds with him. Gradually, the female lord in Zaka's hand stopped moving. By the time she cut off the fingers of her second hand, she had already been tortured to the point of fainting. The next cut was more like Zaka's pointless venting of his anger. Waste. He threw the weak female lord into a puddle full of blood. Zaka raised his head and looked at a lord who was locked in a cage in the basement. All the lords lowered their heads, not daring to look at the cruel governor. Until a demon's face appeared in front of him. Wow, so many fears, is this your gift to me? You, what are you? Zaka subconsciously screamed, his whole body trembled, and then he tripped over a stone. Because he was too fat, he rolled several times before he stopped. However, his shouting also attracted the attention of the servants. A large number of servants came from all directions, aiming their guns at Satan floating in the air and a small hole above the basement. It's not good to point a gun at guests, Governor Zaka Longzionyeo's cold voice came from above. Then everyone fell to the ground like dumplings. Dakai casually made a ball with several scrapped shovels and threw it into the puddle. Gao Qiang, under the protection of Juluo, looked at the scene in the basement. It can only be described as shocking. Zaka's behavior is completely hunting the game lords of the human side. But as a human, he should have no reason to do this. Unless it's for the sea people. Why is it you? After seeing the faces of Gao Qiang and his group, Zaka was silent. I'm going to let you go. Why can't you live well? Why, do you have to come down to see all this? He roared with a bit of heartbreak. Because he knew that if the company found out what he had done, he would be finished. It's not that the company is so humane. It's that the taxes he paid were not enough to make the company turn a blind eye to what he did. He couldn't afford the price he had to pay to make the company do that. At this moment, whether Gao Qiang left or stayed, Zaka would definitely pay a painful price. Finally, the scale in his heart completely tipped over. Kill them.